Welcome, everyone. Pia and Flavia are going to give just a little bit of an overview, and then Leah Getchell, who's also on the line, will talk about a really exciting patient-oriented research network called Cancel CKD. And then Chantelle, who's a really fantastic patient partner with the network, is going to talk about her experiences. And then I'm going to just talk about one of our programs and how we're trying to encourage patients to be part of the process as well. And then we'll open it up for Q&A, but if anyone has any burning questions along the way, I'm sure our speakers will be happy to answer them. So if we can go.
Yes, hello everyone. Normally I don't sound like this, but it's Flavia from the Northern Alberta and the Territories branch. P and I are very excited to be able to kick this off, and I tell you the West leads many things, so we're proud of that. The Kidney Foundation of Canada has been, we've always looked to engage patients and the public. I actually wanted to start off just by pointing out what we use as a definition of patient, and I actually thank Liz for this because in some cases you might know others that might potentially, weren't able to join today, or that you come across in your circles that you think that would be able to. So again, the patient, the definition of a patient, and this is from CIHR, is an overarching term inclusive of individuals with personal experience of a health issue and informal caregivers, including family and friends. So basically, it's all encompassing. If someone is, so many times the caregiver and the family themselves feel just like a patient as their loved one, and so we want to encourage the regional patient networks to be as broad as possible and from all areas, both rural and urban. It's an exciting opportunity that we have in this, especially on the side of research, which, as you know, the Kidney Foundation refers to as hope. Your voices is what is going to make an impact in these projects that are going to be coming in. So we see this as a partnership. It's a collaboration. It's going to have engagement. And with everything that we do, we work with respect, transparency, inclusiveness, and we want to make sure that your voices are heard. You will be able to shape future research and healthcare for our kidney community and beyond. So we're very excited to be able to have the regional patient networks coming up. There will be opportunities usually for a yearly face-to-face meeting, or it's a quick rundown, but overall they will be done on teleconference as we are doing now. So I turn it over to my colleague.
Well, hello everyone, it's Pia Schindler here in British Columbia, and I think maybe just 3 quick points that I wanted to bring to everyone's attention, and overall I think what we know more and more is the value that the patient perspective brings to those who are in research and conducting research. That's number one. And the ability to provide input and engage with those researchers and investigators who are specifically able to bring about the hope that Flavia talks about and impactful outcomes in the future, that is a novel situation in research, period. And so, the Kidney Foundation, we're thrilled to be able to link our patients, a lot of whom are volunteers, together with the Cancel network. And so I think we're embarking all together on a new frontier, and I'm very excited, just as Flavia said, to facilitate the opportunity to bring these two groups together. So I think let the evening begin.
Awesome. Thank you both very much for providing your hopes and ideas about what you hope this will help do. And so now to give us a perspective of some of the work that researchers have been doing with patients, I'd like to invite the lovely and talented Leah Getchell to the quick overview of the Cancel CKD network.
Okay, thanks, Liz and PM Flavia. I'm really excited to be joining you all tonight from London, Ontario, where it is the lovely twilight hour of 8:45 p.m. One of the things that I do want to do before I get into talk about CanSolve, and this is something that we do at all of our CanSolve meetings, is acknowledge the traditional territory from which we are hosting this meeting. So because we are across the country, I'll just speak from the territory that I'm on, which is London, Ontario is on the traditional land of 3 First Nations populations, the Chippewa of the Thames First Nation, Oneida Nation of the Thames, and the Munsee Delaware Nation. These people are long-standing people of this land, and they used to use this land as their traditional beaver hunting ground. So I wanted to acknowledge the land that I'm on tonight. So Cancel CKD is this amazing pan-Canadian research network that has patients at the core and the center of what we're doing. So again, what you heard earlier was that patients are really being brought to the other side of the research table. So rather than being participants, in addition to being participants in research studies, we're also becoming partners in research. And so what Cancel CKD has done is bring kidney patients, researchers, healthcare providers, policymakers, and caregivers to the table to determine what are the priorities for us in kidney research, and then to partner in conducting that research. I should also say that I wear a couple different hats, and that I do have a caregiver hat that I wear, and that my mom had chronic kidney disease for 20 years. She experienced all the different renal replacement therapies, peritoneal dialysis. My dad was a living donor for her, and she had 6 amazing years with that donated kidney, which did end up failing, and then she ended up on hemodialysis. She passed away about 3.5 years ago, but while it's beyond words sad, I feel so much joy every day that I get to now help facilitate patients and caregivers share their story and their lived experience with kidney disease to help enhance the research that we're doing. And my mom was a professional storyteller, so the irony is not lost on me. It's a true gift. And so that's really what we're doing here in the CanSolve network, is having kidney donors, recipients, caregivers, those with kidney disease on dialysis, not quite yet on dialysis, come to the table and be partners in research. Graham, you want to give me the next slide? I'm not really going by script per Graham. He's probably sweating and having no idea where to go with his slides. You just keep going, Graham, and I'll keep up the pace here. Patients are at the heart of everything we do, absolutely. And in fact, before we even were funded as a network, patients were brought together from across Canada and asked, what are your research priorities? What's going on with you and your disease that you want us to help figure out? And that was really new, because up until that point, a lot of research had been done kind of in a silo without understanding what the priorities of the patients were. So this is why the network is so unique, is because what we're researching is what's important to patients. And so patients remain to this day at the heart of everything that we do in CanSolve.
That's great.
So just like I had mentioned, we as patient partners are really on the other side of the research table. So we are helping design research projects. We're helping to execute them. So we're doing research recruitment and data analysis. We're helping to interpret those results, and we're, of course, when the time comes, which is not quite yet, but in a few years from now, we'll help to share the knowledge that is gained from those research projects. Okay, I've talked about this priority setting piece. So we have 18 research projects across 3 main themes. The first theme, we have projects that look at earlier diagnosis of chronic kidney disease. We look at, in the second theme, around better treatments. So, for example, how can we deal with itching or restless legs? Because that's one of the symptoms we heard from patients was driving them crazy, and I can remember my mom dealing mostly with the restless legs. So how can we, for those who do have CKD and who are receiving treatments, how can we make those treatments better? And then the third theme is innovative care. So in the care that we're providing, how can we keep it at the cutting edge, and what is actually the best care? So we have one of our projects in that pillar is a living donor project where we're looking at having peer transplant ambassadors, so those who have received or donated a kidney go to kidney clinics to talk to those about their experience with living donation and transplantation, which isn't being done anywhere right now. So that's what we mean when we talk about innovative care, as an example. So as you can see from this cool slide is that we really truly are a national network with our investigators, patients, and all the many different collaborators and funders right across the country. You can see lots of green hearts out in BC and Alberta, and we do have a large contingent out there, and you'll get to hear from one of those fantastic ladies, I think, pretty soon. So the whole idea is, why are we doing this research? Well, the reason why we do research is so we can transform care, and so that's what this slide is talking about. Again, dealing with symptoms of dialysis, improving the living donor experience, dealing with different treatment progressions, and identifying and treating CKD earlier on. So when I say that patients are at the heart, we really are. At the core of this network is a 30-person patient council, and a part of that patient council is, or separate but integrated, is our Indigenous Peoples Engagement and Research Council. Again, those are 2 really amazingly unique entities in kidney research and research in general, and that when there are questions about the network's direction, they come to the council. So we as patients really are steering the ship. That's what I like to say. I don't know if anyone else feels that way. No, I'm kidding. That's really how it is. So like I said, we've got 30-plus members. We've got kidney patients, their caregivers, family members, donors. We've got Indigenous people, women, men, all ages, rural, urban, remote, and diverse backgrounds. And what I love is the Indigenous Peoples Engagement Research Council, which I know Chantelle will talk a little bit about, but a pretty special, unique group of our First Nations families who are really attending to the important needs of the Indigenous community, because we know that kidney disease does affect that population. And so it's important to have Indigenous representation on this council when we're working specifically on our Indigenous projects. So our motto, our logo is listening, learning, leading. So really listening to patients and caregivers, researchers and clinicians. We're learning from one another as we go, not only about how to do patient-oriented research, but as I think how to become better human beings as we really work through what this new multi-level collaboration looks like. And we're leading, because we are going to be, we're involved in research, leading edge research that is going to change the way that kidney patients experience care and are treated. And we can do that because we have the patient voice at the table. So get involved, and that's what this is all about. And I would happy to answer any questions if you have any burning ones now, and if not, at the end. And I'm happy to pass it along, I think, to Chantelle next.
So does anyone have any quick questions for Leah on anything that they've heard so far? I know it's a quick overview, so please feel free.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi, this is Loretta. I just had a question about the early diagnosis. Is there a particular stage of CKD that they're targeting?
Leah, do you know? Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'll hand it over to you. I'm gonna madly look. I'll tell you some of the early diagnosis projects that are a part of the network. So one of them is defining CKD risk in youth with diabetes, identifying diabetes and CKD in Indigenous communities. I'm just reading you the titles to help you get a sense. Defining risk and personalizing treatment of patients with polycystic kidney disease. Looking at glomerulonephritis. I don't know if I can ever say that. Translational. So we're looking at creating a GN registry. Integrating risk-based care for patients with CKD in the community. Risk prediction to support decision-making and management of heart disease. So we're looking at...
I cannot sign in. I use audio. I cannot sign in. No,
we're looking at developing, there's a kidney risk equation that is being developed. So those are the projects in the early diagnosis. And I'm happy to send you more information on those if you'd like.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Loretta, also that website that you see on the slide, www.cancelckd.ca, is very user-friendly, and it does describe everything very clearly and very accessibly. You can thank Graham for that. And there are also some webinars describing in more detail some of the projects, so it's a really good resource as well. But again, you can reach out to any of us as well if you have any other questions about specific projects.
Okay, thank you.
Pleasure. Any other questions on the line? All right.
I wish it were, this is Cheryl. I actually wish it was easier to get the blood tests to find out what your level is on your GFR.
And that's obviously something that the researchers need to point so that you can work with them to try to figure out how to make that happen.
Because it's sneaky. It sneaks up on you.
Yeah, it is a very sneaky disease. In the interest of time, maybe I'll pass it over to Chantelle now for her presentation of her experiences with this Cancel CKD network, and I'm so delighted because I can't wait to hear her explain her pictures here. So over to you, Chantelle. Chantelle, we can't hear you. Can you unmute your phone or your microphone?
How about now?
That's better.
It's good?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. So my name's Chantelle, and my family is from Satellite Cree Nation, which is in a community in northern Alberta. And I've lived and worked in Calgary for most of my life with my family. I was raised here. So I'm involved with Cancel CKD as a patient partner, and I'm involved alongside my mother, Claire Large. She has chronic kidney disease. So her kidneys failed initially in the 1980s, and then she started needing dialysis regularly in 2004. So she was on dialysis for about 8 or 9 years before she received a kidney transplant in 2013. So these pictures I chose for very specific reasons. So, sorry, I stand corrected. She got a kidney transplant in 2012 because it was always her dream to go to Paris. And kidney failure and being on dialysis was really hard for my mom because she couldn't travel. And it was really hard, even if we had a death back home, it was really hard for her to even travel the 5 hours to go home for a funeral because she always needed to be back for dialysis. And so as soon as she got the okay to fly, she booked a trip to Paris. And every year we go on a trip together, and that's really special to me. And that middle picture there, I wasn't going to post one of my mom because I didn't have her permission, but in that middle picture, we were skydiving in Australia. So that's one of the adventures that we went on. And she was skydiving with me, and that's special because I've seen my mom so sick for so much of my life, right? So when she started on dialysis, I was in junior high school when she first started on peritoneal dialysis. And then through high school, you know, she went on to hemodialysis. She actually didn't get a transplant until I was in university. I was a couple years into university. But because of that, I really feel like I was raised with the effects of kidney disease. So for me, I really feel like I was raised with kidney disease. I remember so many of my mom's hospitalizations due to complications. She had a couple heart attacks back to back. She was hospitalized for a little bit there. I remember having to transport her to and from dialysis, oftentimes late at night. Sometimes she wouldn't be done till like 11:30 at night and needing transportation. And then also witnessing how hard the dialysis symptoms were on her body. So, you know, she had headaches and she had restlessness and she had depression and things like that, right? And we felt it. As a family, we felt it. So her kidney disease really did have an impact on our whole family, and that's why I was really grateful for the opportunity to participate in Cancel. And I think because, you know, my experience is very important to my mom, and I'm really glad that Cancel recognizes the importance of those experiences as well. So in 2014, and Leah touched on this a little bit, but my mom was sitting on kind of a steering committee for the James Lind Alliance, which is the project that set the 10 research priorities. And I went with her to the final meeting, the final workshop in Toronto, because her health wasn't the best at the time. She had just had her kidney transplant. She had just had 2 total knee replacements. So I went with her to just kind of help her. And then it was a very moving experience for me, because what you had there was you had doctors and you had nurses and you had social workers and you had patients and you had caregivers, and they all had to decide what the top 10 questions would be. And what I realized is that what patients and caregivers think is very important is not necessarily what doctors and nurses and healthcare professionals think is very important. And so I remember this one specific story that some healthcare professional, I can't remember if she was a nurse or a doctor, but she was really pushing for cardiovascular health to be on these top 10 research priorities, which is understandable. I mean, cardiovascular health is very important for kidney disease, but the patients were looking more at the symptoms and the impacts on their families, and this healthcare professional was just flabbergasted that cardiovascular health almost never made the top 10. And as I was thinking about that and reflecting on that after, you know, my mom, when she was nearing the time of her kidney transplant, she was really getting tired of dialysis. She was getting so worn out. She worked full time. You know, we come from a family trying to make ends meet in Calgary is not easy. She needed to work to support her family, and she worked full time. She did dialysis 3 days a week. She had all of these symptoms. She was up all night all the time. Finally start feeling better just to go to dialysis again, and it was so hard on her. And when I think about that and I think about her experience, her heart health wasn't important to her at that time. When all of these things are staring at her and she's dealing with all of these things, I truly believe that at that point in time, it wouldn't have mattered to her whether her heart was functioning healthily or not. So that was a really moving experience for me to participate in that. So then when I learned that Cancel was going to be developed to help researchers study these research priorities, I was really happy and really grateful for the chance to get involved. And so in Cancel, I wear a lot of different hats. So I have my little list here, if you don't mind me going through. So I sit on the Patient Council, of course. I sit on one of the 18 research projects. Oh, sorry, actually 2 of them. A working group and a review committee and the Indigenous Peoples Engagement and Research Council. So sometimes as a patient partner, it can get very intimidating. I remember one of my first experiences on the review committee, I had to review this project alongside these doctors and these researchers, and I'm reading like the lay summary, and I had no idea what it said. I remember looking up a word because, you know, you don't know what a word means, you look it up, and then I didn't know what the word meant, and then I had no idea what the definition meant or no idea what the words in the definition even meant. So that was really intimidating for me. But as I started participating, I realized that the doctors and the researchers, they can talk about all of that research stuff, but I really have a lot to contribute to patient engagement and research projects. And that's where I really see my value and I really see my importance. So now it's a little bit less intimidating. And then, of course, the IPERC, the Indigenous Peoples Engagement and Research Council. That's really important to me because kidney disease is so prevalent in our communities. For Indigenous adults, almost 1 in 3 Indigenous adults have kidney disease, and you compare that to 1 in 10 of the general population in Canada, and that's quite significant. But research has sometimes been very damaging for our communities, and so our communities are very hesitant to participate in research. And so I really appreciate getting to sit on this council to ensure that the work that we're doing is respectful and to help to build those relationships and to help Indigenous people feel safe when they're participating in research. So through all of those roles, now I actually was sitting on one of the Indigenous projects, one of the Indigenous research projects, and then I got offered a position as I was making my transition to move back to Calgary. I was working up north for a little bit, and I now work as a research associate on one of those projects, but I'm more of a community partnership coordinator for one of the projects in Indigenous communities, and that's been really special. It's definitely something that I never expected to happen and something I never expected to come out of this work, but it's been good. So yeah, I think that's it for me.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Chantelle. Does anyone have any questions for Chantelle?
How far, this is Cheryl, how far is it for a lot of people to be able to get to dialysis up north in Alberta? How many maybe centers are there that you can have dialysis?
I think for me that's hard to say, but I was working, like my family is from more central Alberta, but kind of northern Alberta, and we had a dialysis unit very close to our community, so probably about a half-an-hour drive. But when I was living up there, there were some people who would travel actually from Saskatchewan to come to that dialysis unit, and I think that they would travel like 1.5 to 2 hours each way. But that's the only unit I can speak of up north.
It's Flavia here. We help reimburse with gas cards to those that have to travel for dialysis. In some cases, obviously, they don't want to move or they're getting training. The furthest person is 500 kilometers one way, and they do that 3 times a week. The average, the next highest average was between 250 to 400 kilometers one way. And then the bulk of the people were in between the 75 to 100 kilometer range one way. So we help in the terms of a gas card for those. They get to qualify up to $1,200 per year, but obviously you can see those funds get eaten up very fast. and sometimes hard choices have to be made. They don't want to leave, but that is the reality in northern Alberta. It's a problem, absolutely.
Yeah, we have the same problems here in BC. In British Columbia here, like Terrace, Prince George, I believe, Fort St. John, and then you go down in through the Okanagan and down into the coast. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't believe that people have to drive for 5 hours to get to their dialysis, do their dialysis, and then drive home. That must be really difficult.
Yeah, because they're tired, they're played out.
Yeah. Any other questions for Chantelle?
You gave a good job.
I'm hearing but I'm hearing someone's voice, but not very loudly. If there's another question, maybe try to get a little closer to your microphone. Okay, well maybe we'll move on, and I'll talk about. So both Leah and Chantelle have talked to you about one way that patients have been involved in research and the process, and very, very involved. And so I'd like to just talk to you about another way that the Kidney Foundation is working on, and that's involving our patient partners in the Crescent program, and I'll explain what the Crescent program is in a minute. But the other person, so I'm the person in this picture with the blue scarf, and Chantelle Boucher, who you've been getting lots of information from, she's the other person, so I just thought you might want to see what she looks like as well. And next slide, so I can explain what Crescent is. It stands for the Kidney Research Scientist Core Education and National Training Program, which is why we call it Crescent, because it's too much of a mouthful otherwise. And this is a program that helps people who are just starting out in their careers as kidney researchers get kind of a leg up and get started and help get trained a little bit. And when we say researchers starting out in their career, we work with postdoctoral fellows. So these are people who have gotten their PhDs, but they're not completely autonomous yet. They're still working with under the supervision of a supervisor. And then a new investigator. So this is someone who is an independent researcher, but they've just gotten their first position and they've had it for 3 years or less. So that's who the program is specifically targeted at. Next slide, please. And so this program provides salary support. So rather than money for a research project, it helps defray the costs of their salaries of these researchers, but also provides education, training, and mentoring, and a curriculum. And the curriculum is provided through 2 workshops a year. And it's really this curriculum that sets the program apart from other new investigator support programs, which often just provide some salary to help them get going. And so we've started incorporating patients into the workshops. And if we can have the next slide, please. So, and this started because Crescent also has a partnership now with Cancel CKD. And so we've started inviting patients for the last 2 years since Cancel CKD started. And their role is increasing more and more as time goes by. And our last workshop was in December in Edmonton, actually. And we had 4 fantastic patients come. And part of the workshop is always sort of a plenary, where a learning exercise, so research scientists come and talk about their research topic based on a theme. And in December, the theme was dialysis. So we had 3 researchers working in dialysis, and then we had 4 patients who are receiving dialysis to come and talk about their experiences. And this helps the researchers remember why this is so important, and also it helps them think about what is important to patients, and maybe that helps impact the research questions that they start to ask. And then the other thing, as Chantelle mentioned, sometimes researchers speak in language that is very difficult for us normal beings to really understand. And so we're trying, part of the Crescent program is really trying to help overcome that gap and to encourage researchers who work in very technical fields to really speak in language that everyone can understand, including each other, because as you go by, you realize that sometimes they don't even understand each other because they've got working in very different fields. So we had the trainees, the Crescent trainees, write plain language summaries of some manuscripts, and then the patients read through them and provided their feedback and led a feedback session with the researchers, giving them some advice on and explaining how they might have, stated something differently to make it a bit more clear. And that was very helpful. And then we've also started doing some Dragon's Den sessions where the Crescent trainees have to fight for a $100,000 grant, which is totally fake, but they have 3 minutes to explain their research and to say why they should get the $100,000, and then the patients vote and they decide who gave the best pitch, who was the most compelling, and who should be funded. And there's always some chocolate as a prize or something instead of $100,000. And now what we're working on is asking patients to participate in the peer review. And Graham, if you wouldn't mind giving us the next slide. Every time someone is funded by, sorry, Graham, do you mind going forward one more slide? If there is another slide, I'm pretty sure there's one more. But if someone's going to be funded by the Kidney Foundation, they have to provide an application. And this application is reviewed by a committee, they call them of peers, so of researchers and scientists who have been working in the field for a while. And I'm assuming that there's an issue with the slide, so I'm just going to keep talking until it catches up with me. Oh, there we go. Awesome. And so these scientists, they review based on, they see, is the project, does it make sense from a scientific perspective? Does it have a really good chance of working, of having an impact? Do they have, the right equipment, the right people, the right instruments in place? Is the applicant, do they seem to be, a really a go-getter, someone who's worked hard, who's smart, who makes good choices, who's, published, who's given presentations, and does it have a good chance of success? Next slide. And so 2 scientific reviewers review these applications based on those criteria. And for this competition that we're running right now, we're going to have patient partners, and we are very grateful to have 7 who have bravely volunteered to help us out. And they're going to be reviewing that plain language summary that every applicant has to include. And we've warned the applicants that this is going to happen and that the patient input will have an impact on their overall score. So please pay attention to your lay summary and take some time with it. So we're very curious to see if that matters. But the 2 patients will review each summary as well, just like the scientific reviewers. And they're going to provide their feedback of the clarity of the summary. Does it make sense? And if it doesn't, how could they make it clearer? Is the project that's being proposed, is it relevant to patients? Is it one of those really high, highly important things, or is it not so important to patients, like the cardiovascular aspect that Chantelle was talking about at that time? And then if they have stated that their project has a patient engagement component, they're going to provide some feedback on that as well, because engaging patients as partners in research is pretty new. Canada and kidney researchers in particular are really leading the way in this field, and so we're still trying to figure it out and understand how it works. And so patients really are the best way of looking at the plan that the researchers have for engaging patients and providing some feedback and really saying, does it make sense, does it not, or are there other ways that they could approach this? So this is our first experience with it. The peer review will take place in the end of April, and together the scientists and the patients are going to decide who will get funded and who will be able to participate in this great program this year. So we're very excited, and we hope it goes well, and we'll let you know. And I think that's it. Yeah. So. And I will, open it up for questions, but we were hoping today to give you some ideas of how patients have been participating in research within Canada, and hope that it was interesting, it was maybe inspiring, useful, and we're hoping that these regional patient networks will be a venue where people who are interested can get more information, can respond to questions from researchers, and can really start to engage. So that's it for me. Does anyone have any questions to myself or to any of Pia, Flavia, Leah, or Chantelle? I'm always sort of happy when there's no questions because I feel like I've been kind of clear, or it means that I've just sort of bored everyone to sleep. So maybe I'll just turn the tables and ask those of you on the phone whether this has, what you thought. Did this, was it encouraging for you to hear? Was it what you expected? Would you like to hear more? What are your thoughts?
Riley, I'm from Fort Saskatchewan and have been seeing Flavia and Manuel in the Kidney Foundation in Edmonton, and I think for me it was really neat to be able to hear just a different perspectives, like as a patient, and to see how our impact and our opinions, I guess, are viewed in the research. I didn't actually even realize that there was something like this even happening, so it was kind of cool to see, and very informative, that's for sure, so thank you.
Wonderful. Oh, good. I'm glad. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Cheryl from Prince George, BC. I'm, yes, shocked. I've been trying to write everything down so that I can take it to the meeting too and let other people know about it. Because we have a good large group here in Prince George, and our biggest problem is a lot of people have to move here for their dialysis, and you know, the closest one is Terrace, other than here when you're looking at Highway 16. But then, yeah, I guess the next one's probably in Alberta. From if you go east and then north is Dawson Creek, and so yeah, it's just terrible for people to have to totally throw up their whole life and move to a center. I'm not on dialysis myself. I'm very lucky. I've had one kidney removed, and there was a 6-pound water-filled tumor in that kidney when I was a young kid. And there was a lot of teas and there was a lot of trouble, and it went right from birth right till I was 14, till the doctors found out what the problem was. But so that one kidney is slipping a bit now, so I want to keep in contact and learn as much as I can, because people in the Kidney Foundation are going to be supportive if I should need another one, or if I should need dialysis.
Let's hope your one kidney keeps trucking for a little bit longer. Thanks. Yep. Anyone else? Sorry, I don't mean to cut anyone off. Well, if there's no other questions, comments, or feedback, I just want to thank you all so much for attending, and I'm going to pass it over to final wrap-up remarks. And I really hope that we'll hear you all again on our next webinar or our next teleconference. Thank you all so much for attending.